Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 10th of December of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, significant number of very interesting updates all over the combat line, and this video we're not going to start with Bohdanivka, where the Russians managed to capture one of the most important strongholds, not from Avdiivka, where the Russians also managed to improve their positions in the southeastern part of that fortification area, and not from Marinka, where the Russians continue reducing the Ukrainian army significantly. Today we're going to start with my famous front line with South Donetsk direction. According to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, as a result of clashes on this area, the Russians managed to the Ukrainians lost 80 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles and 2 artillery systems, and today the Russians began the ground offensive operation in direction of Novomykhailivka. As you can see, according to the geolocations, the Russians managed to get on the edge, and not just get, but to capture the edge positions of Ukrainians in the village itself. So let's start from the beginning. During the previous day and today, the Russians were moving along the fields from their positions, from their mainland in direction of Novomykhailivka, and the Russians were moving, as you can see according to this video, along the fields, and they were capturing one stronghold after another, one checkpoint after another, one trenches after another, and as a result of those series of offensive operations, the Russians managed to get very quick to Novomykhailivka itself. So the Russians started their movements somewhere here, and they were moving along the fields, and the next geolocation we got is from this interception of roads. First we got the geolocation of clashes, so the Russians were moving something like this, and first we got the video of clashes in these trenches. We will not watch this video till the end because of dead bodies of Ukrainian soldiers, casualties among Ukrainians, but the only thing we can now tell for sure that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to establish control over these trenches and the Ukrainians lost these positions. So let's move to the map. So this is the trenches that the Russians managed to establish control over, and the final geolocation we received today, after the Russians captured, moving through the fields, that stronghold, the Russians called for some reinforcement, and reinforcement was sent from Slavna. Some tanks, armored vehicles, and the Russian armored vehicles reached this interception of road where the Ukrainians created some ambush, or at least the Russians managed to land their infantry to capture the strongholds around. They abandoned the armored vehicles, and basically the Ukrainians destroyed those armored vehicles of Russian forces. But no matter the losses, no matter the situation, we have 100% of proofs and geolocations that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation that took place probably yesterday and today, managed to establish control over this territory. Currently the Russians are trying to dig in deeper in this area and to prepare the foothold for further offensive operation inside the village. They have already entered this interception of road, but it's not, let's say, the buildings and the streets of Novomykhailivka. This is like edge positions, but this is significant progress, and we can say that on the 10th of December we can say that the ground operation in Novomykhailivka has started. Now we're moving to the north in direction of Marinka. We also got a lot of very interesting geolocations. The Russians, as a result of clearing operation, managed to establish the second flag in this area on the western edge of the village. If you remember, 10 days ago on the 1st of December, the Russians have already established one flag, but they have established the flag at one street below. So this is the ex-Russian flag position, and this is the new Russian flag position. So they're moving step by step, street by street to the north. Currently, as I understand, that there are no Ukrainians in this area, but there are a lot of traps and mines. There are a lot of mortars, Ukrainian fire, that they can slow down the Russians. I believe that there are still some streets and some buildings on the north, I'd say on the western part of Marinka that are still under Ukraine control, but I believe that the days of Marinka and the days of Ukrainian bridgehead in Marinka are numbered, and obviously before the end of this year, the Russians will establish control over full western part of the village. Furthermore, the Russians published the video how they were bombing using FAP 1500 against the Ukrainian positions between Georgievka and Marinka. We see another evidence that the Russians have changed their focus, have moved their focus further from the edge positions of Marinka to the edge positions of Georgievka. So this is the South Donetsk direction, significant Russian progress either in Marinka and in Novomykhailivka. Now we are moving to Avdiivka area. We also got a lot of geolocations from this territory. According to information we have as a result of clashes on Donetsk direction, which includes not just Avdiivka but also Avdiivka, Donetsk, also Pervomaysk, also Tyomovsk, Bakhmut, Gorlovka. The Ukrainians lost 300 soldiers, 4 armored vehicles and 5 artillery systems. When talking about Avdiivka, the Russians launched a series of offensive operations from the southern direction. The Ukrainians published the video from Severnaya. They published 2 videos, so first of all just pay attention that this video was published by the Ukrainians. On this scene we can see at least 5 Russian armored vehicles moving along the fields. And this is the first video that Ukrainians published, and the Russians were moving something like this, at least till this line. And the second video the Ukrainians published is how the Russian stormtroopers were moving back to Vadiana. So we don't know what exactly did happen there. Maybe the Russians managed to move further and establish control, let's say, over this tree line. Let's move, or maybe the Russians were defeated, who knows. But the only thing for sure, we know that the Russians attacked, and then using some road the Russians were moving back, something like this. We don't know the results of that attack, but according to the common situation on the front line, I believe that the Russians managed to establish control over this territory. They left some forces, some rearguard forces in this area, let's say, to give them time to dig in deeper and to prepare the foothold before further offensive operation to the north in direction of Severnaya. Also, we start receiving more and more updates from the ex-air defense base that located on the south of Avdiivka. On this video we see how the Russians were tracking this territory with FPV drones, and after that they were bombing this territory heavily with artillery systems and so on. And during the previous during December, this is third video in a row which confirms some certain Russian progress focus in this area, and which promise us some activity in the very near future, probably maybe even during the next week or something like this. Also, we got some details from the eastern part and the southern part of Avdiivka. When talking about industrial area, we got some adjustments of the combat line. On this video, we can see the last Ukrainian building in the industrial area, which maybe was already taken by the Russians during the day. But before, let's say, we start making this video, we got this video. We got this geolocation. This is like the Ukrainian stronghold, the edge Ukraine position, machine gun position probably, and the Russians were bombing this territory heavily with artillery rounds, trying to force the Ukrainians to step back from this territory. So basically the Russians were trying to force the Ukrainians to move to the west in direction of the Kirova Street or maybe Lermontova Street. The Russian military expert Ryber also published today a very interesting article regarding the situation, about the situation in Avdiivka, and according to him, the Russians managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt in the eastern and southeastern part, and as a result of Russian offensive operation, they managed to establish control at least over this territory, like this. So according to Ryber, this territory from now on is, just a second. According to Ryber, this territory from now on is under complete Russian control. We don't have any geolocated videos or proofs about this significant progress, so for now I'm not planning to change this map, and also the Russians maintain this area as well. So for now I'm not planning to change the map, but this is, let's say, the first confirmation of significant Russian progress along N20 road. So we'll see whether it's true or not. Now we are moving to Bakhmut, Artyomov's direction, and we got lots of geolocations, lots of updates from the area, from the square between Bohdanivka, Hromova. As you can see, I have already updated the map according to information we have. The like say, the strongholds and fortifications and the tree lines that located on the northwest of Hromova is under complete Russian control. Today we got the video of Russian offensive operation. As a result of that operation, we have the geolocated proofs that the Russians managed to establish control over some trenches. We don't know the information whether the Russians managed to dig in deeper in this area and to secure this area and maybe even to repel the Ukrainian counterattacks. So that's why for now I'm not planning to change this area into red color. We need to wait a day. The Russians need to repel the Ukrainian counterattacks if we're gonna see something like this. But I have updated this map, and now this territory is in the gray zone. This area used to be under Ukrainian control according to the previous versions of this map. Also, a lot of updates are coming from Bohdanivka itself. We got another geolocated video. On this video we see how the Russians managed to bring some infantry. They landed, they managed to drop the infantry on the ground, and the Russians were trying to understand what next, but the Ukrainians attacked the Russian armored vehicles with anti-tank missile. That vehicle was damaged probably. So that event took place here, which confirms that Ukrainians were attacking the Russian armored vehicle somewhere from this line. So somewhere from here, they attacked the Russians like this, and that's it, which confirms that this territory is in the gray zone or even under Russian control. We will change the color of this territory before the next video. Furthermore, we got some picture and some updates from Bohdanivka as well. If you remember, yesterday we discussed how the Russians were bombing this territory heavily. There were no snow in the previous video, which means that maybe that previous video was made a few days ago, not yesterday. And we have the fresh video. As you can see, there are snow in this territory, and the author of this video reported that currently the Russians are making reconnaissance operation. They're flying above Bohdanivka with dozens of drones, trying to record and trying to get and trying to find and discover every single Ukrainian position, sniper position, machine gun position, mortar position, let's say FPV drone positions, the positions of communications and radars and so on. So now they're trying to hard work above this territory, trying to discover, and when everything is ready, the Russians will make a final push and they will capture this territory, and they want to do this very fast. Of course, there are a lot of problems around the Bohdanivka, and as we discussed, the most important problem is the hill that located on the northwest of this territory. Obviously, the Russians need to find a solution how to capture this territory, because without taking control over this hill, the Russians will be able to control Bohdanivka, but they will be forced to pay significant price for this. Now we're moving to Solidar. In direction, as you can see, I have updated the map on the north of Solidar, and the vicinity of Veselaya still remains under Ukrainian control, because we still haven't received anything that proves Russian progress or something like this. Now we're moving to Liman direction. We got also a lot of geolocations. According to the Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainians lost 50 soldiers and 2 armored vehicles. In the previous video, we have already discussed this video, how the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian positions with cluster rounds. I have updated this map. Currently, this territory is in the gray zone. This territory used to be under Ukrainian control now, but I still haven't colored this territory in red because I'm not sure the Russians have stable position there. They need more time to dig in deeper, to prepare trenches, and if we continue to receive at least Ukrainian bombardments of this territory, then we will color this territory in red color, which confirms the Russian progress and Russian success. When talking about Kupiansk, we haven't received anything from this direction, just another video of Udai diary. Today the Russians FPV operator started with 157 casualties from Ukrainian side of killed and wounded, and by the end of the day he managed to reduce the Ukrainian army for another 7 soldiers. He's almost got the half a battalion of losses just from one direction. According to information we have, the Ukrainians lost 30 soldiers and 2 armored vehicles on this direction. We haven't received almost anything from Avdiivka tactical bridgehead and from Rabotina, Bradley Square. We have discussed everything, and we will finish the video with Kherson direction. According to information we have, the Ukrainians lost on this direction another 60 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles and 1 artillery system. As if you remember, we have already discussed this, the Russians are trying to attack. Currently, they're trying to attack Krinky from many directions. During the previous 2 days, the Russians were attacking Krinky from the south and southwest. We had the videos of Russian attacks using infantry and using armored vehicles, and one of the armored vehicles of Russian forces was destroyed. And during the previous 24 hours, the Russians were attacking the Ukrainians from the north. Let's update Let's update the color of icon. The Russians were attacking the Ukrainians from the northeastern direction, and as a result of that attack, the Russians also lost another armored vehicle. So they're trying to attack from different directions, trying to understand where is the best movement, where is what is the best solution for attack. And obviously, I think that there are very high chances that before the New Year comes, the Russians will solve the issue of Krimki as well. Also, during the day, the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian boats that they were using to supply and support their forces, and the Russians were bombing and attacking the banks of Dnieper River. And in this video, we can see another usage, the second usage during the previous 24 hours of FAP 1500 in the vicinity of Tyaginka, somewhere on the shore, that Ukrainians were using for concentration and accumulation their forces before next wave of attack. And the same story in a little bit along the Dnieper River, multi-launch rocket system bombardment of another base of Ukrainian forces in this area. So the Ukrainians are losing, and we see that they do have problems. Just for previous 24 hours, we discussed a very difficult situation in the Ukrainians in Krimki, Tyaginka. We have discussed the beginning of the ground operation in Novomykhailivka. We see that the Russians have almost completed the clearance of Marinka. We see that there are attacks from Vodiana in direction of Vodiana and some progress and confirmed progress in Avdiivka. We see that Ukrainians do have problems in Bohdanivka, that they are about to lose the village and the foothold. About Solidar, Veselaya direction, we see Ukraine have problems in Tarskoye salient. So we see that step by step, but the Ukrainian defense is collapsing every single day for now with a very short and small steps, but every single day the steps are getting more and more, bigger and bigger. And I believe that at some point, if the Ukrainians are not going to find a solution, maybe with mobilization or Western support, the level of collapse will become like mortal for them. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day.